Welcome to the Truth About Picking Masterclass. This is a very, very important video for you because you're going to find out, well, in this video, the correct way to pick. You see, there's a lot of misconceptions about picking, and the reason is because most guitar players find comfortable ways to pick, but they don't spend time analyzing and studying and really understanding why picking works and why it doesn't, and what kind of benefits and problems might come from just playing comfortably. Most players will just kind of, just play around, whatever, anchor their fingers here, all sorts of problems. And I've spent years honing and studying and practicing picking so that it is very effective and very powerful. So when you hear me playing in lessons, for example, you'll hear that I don't really need an amp because the way that I pick is so powerful. So let's get straight into this. There's 4 topics I'd like to cover in this section. Number 1 is picking on a single string, okay? Number 2 is changing strings. Number 3 is muting with your picking hand, such as with your fingers of the hand, and then also with the thumb of your hand, which is part 4. So single string, changing string, muting with the fingers, and then muting with the thumb. This is a very important video for you, so I want you to really study and analyze this and practice this when you're playing. The first thing we're going to talk about is single string picking. That means that you're playing on a single string up and down. I want you to really study the motion that my hand makes here. Notice how my arm stays completely still. There's a tiny little bit of vibration because of the muscle, but my arm is not moving up and down like that. And I've noticed a lot of guitar players, moving their arm up and down like that when they try to pick. And that's a problem. So you want to make sure that the picking comes only from the wrist, directly from the wrist. One way to think of this is if you just kind of do a little wobbling sort of thing. It's sort of like just going up and down like that. Now I want you to actually practice with no pick in your hand. I want you to make sure to sort of ball up your fist a little bit, maybe make a little shape like that, I'm just kind of doing this. And just go down and up, down and up, down and up. And I want you to work out this muscle, because this is the muscle that's going to help you pick faster and faster and faster, okay? To a point where you can play relatively fast. All right, and it sort of comes a little bit at an angle like that. Anyway, that is how you're going to pick on a single string. And now notice how my fingers actually stay still with my hand. It follows the hand, so it's not really that your thumb and forefinger are playing up and down like that. This is what I see a lot of players do, is they pick like that and their fingers stay still, and that is a problem. Okay? So I want you to practice like this, where all your hand is moving, all of your fingers at the same time. It's all moving together, and it's only coming directly from the wrist right here. There's no motion in your arm. Okay? Now this motion here that I'm making right here is actually part of number 2, changing strings. Okay, when you're changing strings, you're going to want to follow the pick and keep the angle the same, because usually when you're changing strings, see, you might be over here and you start to play down here a little bit. Now notice how my wrist just moves like that if it's doing the thing that most people do. Well, that's a problem, because then you're changing the angle, and thus the quality, the sound, and everything, and becomes very sloppy when you change strings like that, just having it stuck in one place and doing things like that. So you want to make sure that when you're picking on this first string right here, then you move to the next string, perhaps string 3 or something. Notice how my arm actually lifts up in a sense, and moves down, moves everything down. It's this little machine, this little engine that goes on a single string and then moves down like that when it switches. It follows the string just going up and down like that. So that's the next thing I want you to actually practice, is just kind of moving up and down with your pick. Well, with your hand, with your arm, really. Everything moves together, up and down like that. That is the next thing I want you to practice, okay? Now, I also want you to practice the two things in combination with no pick in your hand. This is very important. I don't want you to practice this, trying to practice on the strings at first. That is not going to help you develop the right techniques. So I want you to take the pick out of your hands, and I want you to do this in the middle of the air. First, you practice a little bit of this up and down. Then you practice the arm motion. And then I want you to combine the two together. Start slowly moving your arm down as you, and up and down, up and down, up and down like that, as you move your wrist up and down, okay? And watch my arm moves together and my wrist moves down. These are all muscles that you need to train. So do this, and this is going to relax everything and make everything feel really good, and practice that muscle movement. Then you could try it with the pick in your hand and see how it feels. But don't play yet. Just do it in midair. All right, this is step 2, doing it in midair. All right, or once you sort of you can hold the pick sort of like this, where the tip is not pointing out. You can just kind of put it right in the middle of your fingers, but not really having it stick out. Okay, and then you can sort of put it on the guitar and pretend like you're picking on a single string. Just kind of practice that a little bit, and then move your arm up and down like that, and then, combine it all together and do something like that. Okay, that's step 2, putting the pick in your fingers, all right, and then moving everything just like that. Those are the motions. I want you to actually just practice the motions without the picking, without anything going on, without no sound, just the motions and the muscles by themselves. Then we're going to talk a little bit about muting with fingers. Okay, this is part 3. Step 3. Muting with your fingers, these 3 right here. A lot of players anchor their fingers on the guitar and then they play. And what happens is, something weird like that happens, where everything's all messy. Okay, that's very bad. What you need to do is, instead of anchoring on the guitar, anchor, perhaps, I wouldn't say anchor, but sort of rest your fingers on the strings. On the strings. Why? Because listen, when I pluck these strings here, there's no sound, because I'm touching the strings, thus muting them. If I don't touch the strings, you can hear all the excess noise, all the excess stuff. Even if I do a little bit of palm muting, which another way that people try to mute is that they stick their palm there on the guitar, but you can still hear a little bit of things going on. Okay? So palm muting is not effective as a muting technique. This, with the 3 fingers, I'm sticking my pinky finger in between string 1 and 2, just right in there. Okay, you can even kind of see it. I'm sticking my ring finger basically on string 2, or maybe in between string 2 and 3. Okay, and the 3rd finger is just kind of resting right there too, in between 2 and 3. It's kind of in the same spot. All right, and now what happens is, now if I'm playing perhaps on string 3, well, first of all, if I'm on string 3, I got all 3 of these shoved in between string 1 and 2. Okay, so there's no sound coming out of 1 and 2, but I can pick on string 3 and it sounds good, and there's no palm muting going on here, so that the string sounds very clearly. Sounds good, right? All right. Now when I go up to other strings and stuff like that, my fingers just kind of move along and they just touch strings that are below the pick. All right. And this makes a very nice sound, because these strings are not being played, except for the one that I want to play. That's the only one you hear. Now, this is also possible because guess what? There's strings on this side of the pick, but there's also strings on this side of the pick, above the pick, closer to you. And with that said, we need to talk about part 4, thumb muting. Okay? Thumb muting. This is a little bit more challenging than having your fingers on the strings. That's pretty easy. I want you to definitely integrate this technique into your playing right away. Right now, you can easily do that. Instead of anchoring on the guitar, anchor on the strings. And now you have an effective muting technique for these strings here that are below. But for the strings that are above, these deep ones, we need to take our thumb, this side of the thumb right here, right in there. Alright? You don't really need to see exactly where my thumb is touching, but just imagine you take your thumb and you stick it on the guitar like that, nice and perpendicular to everything. Alrighty? It's on the side right here. We stick it right there and then rub it. This is an exercise I'd like you to do, is actually just rub the strings with your thumb. Nice and even like that, nice and slowly. Just feel how it feels to touch the strings with your thumb, because this is something very rare that most guitar players do not use. So this is a very special muting strategy, and it's very effective because now we've got no sound, and with the grabbing down here, there's again only one string that is being sounded out at any one time. That way, when we pluck on that string, that is the only string that you can play. Very, very powerful muting. Alright? So my thumb, for example, is touching string 6, 5, and 4. And it's touching that. Even when I go up and down, I'm making sure I'm staring down here. And I'm making sure that my thumb is always touching string 4. Is very difficult to hold on to, because when you're going up and down like that, you have a tendency to pull your thumb up a little bit too high. And if you do that, all of a sudden, we got the 4th string ringing out. So you don't want to lift it up too high. Stare down in there and make sure that you can touch right there on string 4. It's going up and down like that, but notice it is still touching string 4 at all times when I'm going up and down. Alright, that is critical right there. That is always touching string 4, 5, and 6. And these 3 fingers are touching string 1 and 2. And then you can pick on string 3. Alright, this is something I'd like you to practice. Number 1, with no pick in your hand. Practice doing that. Imagine there's a pick there, and just kind of make those tiny, tiny, tiny little motions. Just making sure that you're always touching. You know, take your finger and sort of swipe the strings, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, 4, 5, and 6 are being muted with the thumb. Okay, these 3 fingers are touching string 1 and 2. Very easy to do this, okay? But it's difficult to implement this and actually move it into your guitar playing as a thing. It's very easy to just kind of sit there like this so you feel what's going on. But now we can do that, we're going to need to practice, okay? So you go up and down, pretending like there's a little string in your, there's a little pick there. Okay, again, it's only going up and down like that. Not doing anything crazy, nothing fancy here, okay? This is something you can practice today, right now. Then you take the pick, and again, sort of stick it in there like that, but don't actually, make it come out, okay? And then you're gonna start doing it again. Up and down like that, okay? Nothing's happening. I'm just got the pick in my fingers going up and down. Then I want you to take it and push it out a tiny, 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 tiny little bit, okay? Just barely, 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 all right? Now try, so you can barely, I mean barely, 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 barely gently touch against the string. So that way you can feel how it might feel to have this happen to you. The reason why I do not want you to do it all the way out is because when you do that, you have a tendency to push down with various muscles, and you have all these bad habits right now that are sort of causing your thumb to move around like that and, you know, doing weird motions. So we want to completely erase those things by reprogramming your hand, okay? So again, with nothing sticking out, and then a tiny, 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 tiny bit sticking out. You can hear it a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, okay? And then after that, I want you to see how I'm actually holding my pick here. I've got it's an okay sign, okay? It's just a regular old okay sign. My finger's kind of coming down a little bit there towards the, this finger is not that important. You can kind of, you know, curl up a little bit, or, you know, kind of rest there like a pinch or something. It's an okay sign, okay? And my thumb, this is the critical point. Notice how it's not sticking over the pick like that, okay? It's not over the pick. Let's see how you can see that. Anyway, it's not over the pick like that. It is a little bit sort of towards the middle of the pick, and there's a good amount of bottom part sticking out, okay? Just a good amount. It's about right in the middle of the pick. I'm using a hard pick, 1.0 millimeters. If you can get even higher, 1.2 millimeters, 1.3 millimeters. Those are good picks. If you go below 1 millimeter, then you will start to encounter problems when you're playing, because the little picks, the thin picks, actually wobble around like that when you're playing. Now, that will cause problems. It's going to cause rhythmic problems, and it's going to make your picking sound weaker, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult. I went to the music store the other day, and I tried to buy some picks. Well, turns out that they were pretty much out of stock of the light picks and the medium picks. And I was just sort of thinking to myself, LOL, the noobs don't really know why the thick picks are more powerful. That's because they have a good durability. They do that when they play. They don't do that, okay? I'm not really sure why medium picks are so popular and why light picks are so popular. I never really liked light picks, actually. I always preferred, when I was first starting, I didn't know anything about durability. I kind of went for medium picks, you know, because they give a good power to your pick, you know. Sounds good when you hit the strings medium-wise. Mediums are okay, but they still have problems because they bend, and now the hard picks are very, very good for you. So, I would highly recommend to get a hard pick, and this is the way that you want to stick your thumb on the pick. Not over the pick, not in a weird position like that, you know, not doing something like that. That's a bad grip. Okay sign, 3 fingers, loose, okay? I want you to loosen up, just very, very loose here. Everything's nice and loose, okay? Nothing's tight. Even when I'm going up and down like that, nothing's very tight, okay? Everything is very loose. All right, now we've covered thumb muting, muting with the fingers. This is all stuff you can do right now, especially if you're not actually holding the pick in your hand. You can definitely practice this. We've practiced changing strings, going up and down like that. You do not want to change strings by rotating your wrist. No, no, no. And when you're playing on a single string, it only comes from your wrist, and the 3 fingers follow that, okay? This is all synchronized together. It's a little engine for picking, okay? And this picking strategy is going to help you for lead guitar playing and rhythm playing, and no matter what other type of picking you want, this is the grip that you need to use, and this is how you're going to become an awesome, awesome virtuoso guitar picker.